I'm going to check on my phone, make sure it has actually done what it's supposed to do, because sometimes it takes it a moment or two. And naturally, my phone's not wanting to show up. That's a little weird. Hopefully the live is working. It says it is. So we'll see how it goes. Okay, we're doing another candidate sit down with Tara Anura. Anura. I really hope I don't butcher that too many times today. We did a sit down the other day, and we're just having a general conversation about the candidates. We're hoping this is a little bit of fun and educates the people of the district on you. So, why don't you tell me about yourself?
Right. Thank you. I appreciate you having me here to introduce myself to people. And I guess I'll start with I'm a lifelong Missourian. My family originally came over from Ireland, Scotland, Wales, into the Carolinas and Virginia,
Okay.
and then into Appalachia, and then eventually here to the Ozarks.
Oh, like in the Ozarks.
Yes. And I had a great great grandma named Sarah, and who everyone said I look a lot like.
Well, that's quite interesting.
And she was a midwife.
Huh.
So she would actually, when she would help people, she would often change outside after she attended to a sick family, so she wouldn't take the illness home, change in like the smokehouse or the barn. And she was known for knowing how to bank the fire, either in the fireplace or on the stove, to help premature babies.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy and interesting to think. Think about how much that medical has changed, and that somebody in your family was trying to do stuff at that. Because that's a long time. That's obviously a long time ago. That's
Right.
not like that was your mother a handful of years ago doing that.
No.
That was your
My great
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 grandma
grandma
on my grandpa's side.
side. Wow.
I think that was down in the Yonk community, which was a German and Lutheran community, farming community. So my grandpa learned how to butcher animals on the farm,
Okay.
and then later he took that job to Perryville, where he was a butcher.
Okay.
Met my grandma,
Oh, okay.
and then he was shipped off to World War II. And so once he got out of, it was either just before he was released, or they got married, or when he returned, they got married. But yeah, my grandma had to nurse him back to health because he had experienced a lot of illness and malnutrition
Should
because he was out in the Pacific,
fake
and not you don't get daily, grocery store.
or yeah. That was unfortunately through World War II. Well,
Mm-hmm.
through all the world wars, there was a lot of stress put on a lot of people, and a lot of horrors that some of those people brought back
Right.
and had to deal with, and they didn't come back and just be snap, you're instantly happy and great and all of that stuff.
No, he was the cook and the butcher on the ship, but he too had to learn how to man the guns. So he'd be in those really tight turn areas sometimes, and he was claustrophobic ever since then.
Oh, I can imagine why.
And but it's interesting because some of my fondest memories of my grandpa are him sleeping on the floor, because he was used to like hard surfaces, and so he'd usually sleep in front of the fireplace,
Wow.
at their home on their 40 acres in the Ozarks. And me and my cousins, we spent most of our childhood out there running on their land, helping build a fire, that
That,
kind of thing.
well, that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I learned so much about conservation from my grandpa, like how it's important to thin the forest, make sure the animals have enough to eat. Like years there weren't a whole lot of acorns. He'd put like some corn out or whatever for the deer and the turkey. And, that's where I got my passion for running up and down the deer trails and the hunting culture.
And spending a lot of time outside and just
Exactly.
enjoying the environment.
Mm-hmm. So that was in the Piedmont area in Wayne County. So we spent a lot of time at Sammy Baker. And I remember loving to collect the obsidian and the pumice out of the river.
Yeah.
Because the Ozarks used to be, ancient volcanoes, and then they used to be as big as the Rockies. And over time, and with glaciers and weather, they've kind of gotten smaller. I like to think my family history here is almost as old as the mountains. Well, not quite, but it feels that way.
But, yeah.
Going back so far. And but my family really gave me an appreciation of hunting, fishing, land conservation, camping. And, I really am passionate about preserving our forests and our water quality and our air quality. So after all those summers living in Piedmont and moving around the state with my family, I went through some hard times, really hard times after my parents divorced. My dad had some serious head injuries from an accident we had been in, and he had actually broken his neck. An accident we had when I was in third grade, and I re-broke some bones, and we didn't get very good health care at that time. And unfortunately, my dad, to cope with a lot of his pain and his mental illness, he turned to opioids and methamphetamines.
Oh, and unfortunately, we know how difficult. Unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of people today are still dealing with some of those issues.
Exactly.
And we know how much that has made things difficult for families. That's not a fun thing to have to deal with at all.
Yeah, and so I went through a lot of pain and abuse in that household at 14, 15. I had to become the parent to my step-siblings and my siblings. Learn how to grocery shop, prepare meals, get people up for school, get them home from school. I was the adult.
Yeah.
Because my stepmom, she had severe endometriosis, and they didn't have very good insurance. So she couldn't get in to have the procedure to help her stop the bleeding. She would be in her room 3 weeks out of the month almost, just bleeding.
Ugh.
And so she tried to treat the pain with meth and pot and alcohol. So I started working when I was 15.
Wow.
Which I think that's pretty common among a lot of people in Missouri. You start working as soon as you can. If you want to be able to have field trip money, or even I've met teenagers who work to help put food on the table.
Yeah, but there's a difference between working for a little bit of play money and working to help support stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think that's why we need to respect people who work in food service and retail, because we kind of say, oh, let's keep the pay low because it's a bunch of teenagers just getting pocket money. But sometimes they're taking, like in my situation, they're helping take care of family, or and so I've worked in food service like for a long time, starting out in high school and through college, and I've worked with elderly people, who couldn't afford to retire. I've worked with young kids, cooking food and that kind of thing. So and then eventually I worked my way through college in Cape Girardeau at SEMO.
Okay.
And I worked in the cafeteria feeding all the football players and basketball players, and then worked a little bit at the library. And I got my degree in mass communications.
Mass communications, you were talking before we started about a little bit working in the SEMO area and with the newspaper and stuff like that, which was always, close and dear to my heart, obviously being a newspaper person.
You know, one thing I'm so excited about is okay. My dad used to read to us the Little House on the Prairie books by Laura Ingalls Wilder.
Yeah.
That was one of the before he became seriously ill. That was one of the few times I felt like I had a relationship with him. My sister and I had a relationship, and because he was calm, we could share the stories before going to bed. You know, cozy with your stuffed animals, your pillows, and everything. And so I think that sense of connection and hearing her stories really made me want to become a writer.
Okay.
And so on a lot of family vacations, we'd go to different places where Laura Ingalls and her family had lived. And of course, you know, it's so exciting to know down in Mansfield is where she wrote her books. And that's in Wright County.
Yeah.
So now I have the home place, the farm where Laura Ingalls Wilder wrote all her books in my district.
Oh,
that means a whole lot to me.
Yeah, I imagine so. Yeah, because
Yeah.
that puts that's a very interesting and real personal connection to that.
To Wright County.
Yeah.
And so wanting to be a writer, that's how I got involved with the Kappa Arrow at SEMO as a student journalist. And then I got involved with the Southeast Missourian for a while, working in customer service, getting people their subscriptions.
And stuff along those lines.
Yeah.
When did you start getting involved on some of the politics stuff? Is that more recently, or have you always been involved in?
I have always been involved with activism and civil rights and human rights issues. In Cape Girardeau, my spouse and I at the time, I'm currently divorced, but we ran an environmental newsletter that we passed around. Really small. It's not like we had a huge readership or anything. But we covered things such as the amount of lead and mercury in the Mississippi River. How the authorities kept telling people you should only eat 1-2 fish out of that river every week because of the lead and the mercury issues. So we covered issues like that. We covered, I think at the time some old coal mines caught fire. And so we had a lot of underground fires like through Mexico and Texas, I think, back in the 90s.
Unfortunately, I wasn't following the news back then.
Yeah.
So,
But I was also a activist for religious rights.
Okay.
In the 90s, believe it or not, veterans couldn't have any symbol they wanted when they were buried in the National Cemetery. The symbols were restricted to Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. Say any veterans who belong to Wicca or the goddess religion or the Sikh or Hinduism, they didn't have the option to have those symbols put on their tombstone.
Huh. I would never have known that.
Yeah, that actually the VA didn't actually change that until about 2004, 2005. But it was because of a lot of citizens petitioning them, saying, hey, these people fought for our country.
And they're being left out of that.
Yeah. If we're going to say we're going to honor our veterans, we need to truly honor all of them. So I worked with the Lady Liberty League and other people to petition the government and constantly write to the VA and our legislatures, and it finally got changed.
Well, that's good. That's unfortunately some of that stuff takes a while and it's a little slow, but persistency, keeping going, has made it happen.
Exactly. There was also an instance down in Mingo. I think it was part of AmeriCorps. So it was a place where teenagers could go, and this is like toward the Poplar Bluff, Sykeston area. Teenagers would live and work on this, what would you call it? Well, it's kind of like a school/work camp, right?
Okay.
And they were being forced every Sunday to get on a bus and go to church. Now, on the front, that's great. Like, hey, you're getting these young troubled teens involved with the community. But I and other advocates had to remind them that we have the freedom of religion in this country. You can't tell these boys they're not going to get the education, a place to live, and a paycheck because they're not going to go to church on Sunday.
Yeah.
You know, so that's some of the other advocacy work
That did.
Mm-hmm.
And so what did I mean, obviously now you're running for state senate.
Yeah.
What led you in, was there a specific event that led you to run this for state senate, or was it, just I guess I don't quite know where I want to go. Was that what led you to want to run for state senate? I guess is how I need to say that.
Okay. Well, so I have a chronic health condition called Turner syndrome, which means there's some deformities in some of my chromosomes, right? And only women can get Turner syndrome.
Oh.
And so my whole life, it's been a struggle to get the health care I need here in Missouri.
Okay.
There's no Turner syndrome specialists in Missouri. I often have to go to neurologists and endocrinologists, and you really can't find that kind of specialized medicine in small rural communities. I was always having to go to, when I was in Cape, I could get that, but when I moved to Texas County and other places like that, I would have to go all the way to like St. Louis. If I want to see a Turner syndrome specialist, I have to go all the way to Chicago.
Holy mackerel. I mean, is that just because it's that rare? I mean, is it realistic? Is it that rare of a syndrome, or is it just?
Well, that's part of it, but I think there's almost 1,000 of us here in Missouri that have Turner syndrome, and you would think that would be enough to have a clinic.
You would think, especially because I imagine you have to. It's not like you're going to the doctor once a year. You're seeing the doctor quite a bit more regularly.
I have a major doctor appointment every few months. Yeah.
And yeah, that seems. I can understand why someone would want to get involved in stuff when you're dealing with something like that
right.
would you feel needs to be addressed, and it is obviously not been addressed.
And also, I work as much as I can. I can only work part-time because of Social Security disability income restrictions.
Yeah.
And because of just what my body can handle. And I and other people got really tired of us being told that I and other workers who are poor are lazy. We don't know how to spend our money. And I've gone to financial experts before, and they've just looked at me and go, "It's not about how you're spending your money. You're just poor. I'm sorry." And I see so many people struggling to keep their housing, to pay their bills. I just felt like we deserve better. I was one of the volunteers who worked really hard to gather signatures for the Medicaid expansion.
Okay.
Right? And we got that on the ballot. Missourians voted for it. And in a democracy, the people are supposed to be the voice, the government, right? And we got completely ignored. So then there was 2 years of petitioning our government saying, hey, we want our Medicaid expansion. More people deserve to have health care. Pregnant women, children. And I personally believe health care, education, food, water, shelter, that's all a human right. If you're born, you deserve what you need to survive. I don't think that's people asking for entitlements. I think that's part of a community to everybody pitch in and make sure we have what we need. So I was concerned about our democracy here in Missouri and how the common people, especially disabled people, were being treated. So I decided to run for office to give everybody a voice.
And here you are running around exactly that, right?
I came here after having a women's lunch in Vichy at the Volunteer Fire Department. Bethany Mann was there. I think she's running for US 3.
Yeah.
Bernadette Holzer, who's running for State Representative 143, and myself. And the stories we heard today are heartbreaking. One woman is having trouble getting the mental health care her daughter needs because she's going through a mental health crisis, but it's several months down the road before she can get her into a counselor. And luckily, I was able to share information that they might have a bed for her in Festus. That'll a compassionate place will take her and actually give her therapy and treat her with respect. Unfortunately, a lot of mental health facilities in Missouri over medicate people and just kind of keep the bed warm so they can get the Medicare money.
Yeah, that unfortunately there's a lot of issues with a lot of things, and that seems to be one of them. That there's a lot. There seems like there's enough places that are kind of taking advantage of situations like that.
Yeah.
And it unfortunately it hurts the patient, or in a healthcare situation it hurts the patient, or
Exactly.
and yeah, well, hopefully they're able to get the help that they need, because that's one area where I don't think we put enough emphasis on people's mental health, because it is mental realistically, I believe that your mental health determines a lot. Like if you're not
Absolutely.
mentally strong and dealing with mental issues, it's going to affect your output every day. And if you're not in a good place, are you gonna quote be productive is probably the right way to say it. If you're gonna struggle with other things, you're gonna just, if your mental isn't good, you're gonna struggle all the way through. And
Yeah.
probably create problems elsewhere. If you're dealing with mental issues, there's going to be, you're more likely to commit crimes, which is going to, just all the way across the line, it's just going to cause more and
Exactly.
more problems. And we definitely don't seem to be fixing that.
I wish there had been those resources available for my dad and my stepmom. I know nobody could have made them necessarily go, but often my dad wouldn't go to therapy or rehab because just as like they didn't have the right medical resources for their physical ailments, there weren't enough resources for their addiction or their mental health issues.
Yeah.
And as we talked a little bit before, there's a lot of problem with addiction in Missouri. And I really think instead of telling people, well, you need to go to church and find God, let's open clinics where they can go to rehab that's affordable. They can spend more than just 4 days. Sometimes it could take a year. Not necessarily in rehab, but someone will need a few months in rehab,
Yeah,
and then continuous support
throughout.
and therapy for years.
Yeah.
And as Missourians, we deserve better. We deserve to thrive, to be able to pay our bills, to be able to break this abuse and addiction cycles, not only for ourselves but for our children, the future of Missouri.
Yeah. Sounds like you're pretty passionate about some of this, some of this stuff, because obviously you've lived through it. You've been dealing with some of this
Exactly.
stuff your entire life.
Right.
Um, so I should probably ask, what are some of the other, if you're elected, what are the other areas besides the medical, the healthcare, that type of deal? What are some of the other areas that you really want to spend time focusing on?
Right. Well, I highly value education, whether it's I am a graduate of Head Start and preschool and high school and college. I'm also really big on trade schools for people because I know university isn't for everybody. There's all kinds of ways to be intelligent. Like, I wouldn't know how to go in and fix all the plumbing in a house or do the electricity. So I want to see our schools from Head Start all through trade school, high school, all the way into college better funded because the democracy relies on people who can critically think for themselves, a well-informed public. And I think education gives people a real good start toward having a career, navigating their life. So often there's people in Missouri who have about 6th grade, junior high level of literacy, right?
Yeah.
And we are 50th in teacher pay. And we're going through a big teacher shortage right now. So how are we going to have a well-informed public with our schools only staying open 4 days a week, with teachers who don't want to stay because they're not being respected? And salary shows people they're respected for their time, and being the daughter of a teacher, a retired teacher, and the daughter of a granddaughter of a teacher, they bring homework home, they're grading papers while trying to cook dinner or even sitting at the table.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure our tax dollars come to our districts, our towns, to keep the schools open. Maybe even bring back shop and mechanic trades to the schools.
It seems like there's some schools that are still doing that, but it seems like not as many of them are.
Right.
And it seemed, I mean, obviously, I hate to say it, I didn't learn too much in those shop classes because I guess that's not quite where my skill set lies.
Yeah.
But there was also a lot of kids that did learn a lot in those classes that I saw that are now doing that type of stuff, that have went on to trade schools and have excelled whenever it comes to that. And yeah, if we're not giving them the opportunity to succeed in school, what's that old saying that, testing a fish, if you're trying to get a fish to run, it's always going to fail. The fish needs to be in the water, or there's some,
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, the point is you have to be equipped for the environment you're in, right? And I think education is meant to prepare us to go out and be productive citizens and good people.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm passionate about education. And I'm passionate about our environment too.
Okay.
And making sure our communities make it through the climate crisis. As we saw, we had a massive drought here in Missouri. Farmers were struggling to keep their cows cool. People were struggling to produce enough hay. Because when cows get really stressed out, they don't cool down at night, if the temperatures don't get cool enough, they don't produce enough milk. They could have problems calving. They could even die. And everyone can agree we want clean water, right?
Yeah.
I think everyone could agree we want to be able to drink our water, and you can't drink your water if it's full of like factory chemicals, if it's full of the manure runoff from the massive feedlot farms, right?
Yeah.
So I want our communities to be prepared to weather droughts and storms. Because even though we were having a major drought, St. Louis got the hell beat out of it with a water rain. People had their cars washed away, their basements flooded, that kind of thing. And I found out that Marys County, I found this out today, is one of the evacuation staging grounds for St. Louis. If they have a big enough disaster, like a bigger flood or an earthquake because of New Metric Fault, people are going to be evacuated to Marys County and the airport.
Oh, well, yeah, with the airport.
Right.
That's the Vichy Airport is something in Marys County that's actually quite incredible.
Yeah.
Like, I've always heard the rumors that part of the reason the Vichy Airport was built was and it's actually fairly large for, quote, small runway, that it's actually built to be an alternative landing site for necessarily military aircraft and stuff like that.
Yes, I learned that the military craft did land there during World War II.
And if I remember correctly, we found out that while President Biden was vice president, he actually came in and visited Rolla once, and they landed in the Vichy Airport and was using the Vichy Airport to land the vice president in with his aircraft. And so, but that's just one of the things that, so that airport's built big enough to be able to handle some pretty large craft, and that's pretty exciting.
Yeah. And so these smaller communities, they're struggling with what little resources they have. Well, how are they going to help all these people that have to come here for help, right? Yes, the FEMA, other things can come in. But that just shows me how much our rural communities need to be prepared for natural disasters in the future. More heat waves, stronger, more unpredictable storms. Yeah, let's look how many communities have good tornado shelters, right? I'm sure and at the schools, there might still be classrooms housed in old
Trailers. Yeah, there's unfortunately still a couple of those that I'm aware of. Yeah.
Right. So we need to be able to protect our children and our families, and that's very important to me. We deserve safe communities.
Yeah.
You know.
I guess one of the things I also want to ask you about is on the amendments. How do you feel about the amendments that are being proposed? I mean, obviously, you worked real hard to get the amendment petition for the Medicaid expansion.
Yes.
So I'm assuming you're a big fan of amendments in general, about the
am.
idea of letting people vote. How do you feel about the amendments that are currently being proposed?
Well, first I want to address how I'm concerned that our current senators and representatives in the General Assembly are trying to make the petition initiative harder. And to me, I feel like that's taken away the voice of the people. Because they're trying to say urban communities are telling rural communities what to do. But if you look at the voting record for the Medicare expansion, that was passed pretty much statewide. There was a lot of consensus on that. So we're now seeing another petition, and I believe that is the legalization of recreational marijuana.
Yeah. That's kind of the big one that's on a lot of people's minds.
Yeah, it's not perfect. I would like to see a lot easier for people who were convicted of nonviolent marijuana charges, like having some pot on them. I would like to see it a lot easier for them to have their records expunged. Because then they can become productive citizens, have a job, participate in our society. And I do agree it needs to be regulated, right, for people's safety. There are definitely benefits to hemp and marijuana. I use CBD myself for chronic pain because of Turner syndrome and my immune system, right? My immune system attacks my skin and my bones, so that can be really painful.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know that much, honestly, about the National Guard amendment. And I haven't had a chance to go in and speak to members of the National Guard or their the people in charge to see if that change would benefit them, help them perform better. Because they're the ones who are going to come in when we have those disasters and help us, right? So if that amendment would benefit them and they say so, I'll vote for it. I have learned so much on this campaign, and I really wish every citizen can learn this depth of knowledge about how our government works. Because since it's our government, we need to know, right?
Yeah.
So with the constitutional amendment, what'll happen is if people say yes, we want a constitutional convention, and this is something that legally has to be on the ballot every 20 years.
Yeah.
Governor Parson will say, okay, we're doing this. Republicans, Democrats, pick your people. Now, in Missouri, we have the House districts. For this area, it's the, in Marys County, it's the 143. I'm not sure what it is for Osage.
Yeah, I unfortunately the numbers have changed, and so I need to go. I need to go. I'm not exactly sure either at the moment.
And then we have the Senate district. For me, it's SC 16.
Yep.
So, the committees in these Senate districts. So you have party committees at the state, county, Senate district, and House district levels. The committee members for both parties at the Senate district level will get to pick, I think it's like 34 people each.
Yeah.
They can't be elected officials, right?
Yeah, I did read through that, and that was one of the things I liked about that it's not elected.
Me too.
So it can't be somebody that's already elected. It's not somebody that's already, quote, got their finger in the pie or dealing with the stuff.
So already we've got more kind of average citizens getting involved in this constitutional convention. Then there's going to be members who are called at large. I don't exactly know how many they would be picked, how many would be needed, but they'll get to run in elections. They'll be on the ballot. Missourians will get to pick who those people will be. So it's a very democratic process. then once the convention begins, these attendees, these delegates, can propose as many amendments and changes as they want to our Constitution. But someone can't just say, I don't like bubblegum, no one can chew bubblegum anymore, I'm being silly for brevity. And that would be in the Missouri Constitution. No, all these changes, all these amendments, they go back to the voters.
To be confirmed.
Yes. That eased my mind a lot, because I know a lot of people have had concerns that, oh, well, what if representatives of either the far left or the far right get in, make these bizarre, amendments that don't actually help the average citizen, right? So that eased my concern. But I think it's best for everybody to understand that process a little more and decide if they're going to be willing to not just say, yes, I want a convention and leave it at that.
Because, if you say yes, you're potentially, there's
people
will have to be involved in that all the way through.
Yeah, I want viewers and listeners to know there's a bigger commitment than to just checking yes.
Yeah.
You're going to have to get involved with who's going to be the at-large people. You're going to have to be involved in paying attention to what they say, the reasoning for the amendments, know what they're changing, and then be informed when you vote on the ballot for those changes.
So, okay.
I hope that helped people understand the process a little bit better.
I hope so too. We've been here just a little bit over 36 minutes, and unfortunately, I've got an event I have to get on the road to.
I'm a big talker.
Well, no, we've been fine. I wish we've been having fun. I wish we could keep going a little longer, but unfortunately, I need to be on the road to a softball game. Otherwise, I'm gonna get in trouble. I'm gonna get people are gonna jump on me.
Well, you're welcome to have me back. I'd love to talk with you more.
Well, hopefully the idea is hopefully we'll be able to keep doing these, and we'll even be doing these off of the quote campaign, off of the election cycle, and to keep having political conversations with both sides of the aisle as stuff affects Missourians and stuff like that over the coming years. We've got this room more specifically set up for this. It's not quite set up how I want it to be. We're gonna, I want to get a little paint on the wall, a little more seats, mics mounted, so we'll be able to have. Great. Ideally, I'd like to be able to set 4 to 6 people in here with microphones that'll be like boom mics that'll pull off the wall, so somebody will be able to sit here and a better camera and stuff like that. And so that's my goal.
That's a big dream. I like it. Well, people can find out more about me at TaraAnura.com.
Okay.
I actually answer my phone. I answer my own emails. So I will answer any questions sent to me or spoken to me in a civilized way.
Awesome. Very good to hear.
I'd love to chat with people.
And then obviously the other thing we need to make sure and point out to people is that make sure everybody gets out and votes on November 8th.
Yes, make your voter plan now. Know where your polling place is. You can look on your voter registration card and think about when you're going to go vote so you can get that time off of work.
Yep. Yes, indeed.